On today's show, I am joined by my partner in crime for my full-time job over at Grant and Danny. It is Darris Dameron from the Grant and Danny Show. And on today's show, we are going to attack what is one move that we want to see happen this offseason.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as our show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, make sure to check us out over on Twitter and look up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcast. Today, Darris Dameron from the Grant and Danny Show joining myself. This is someone who is with me in the room every single day for 5.5+ hours. So Darris and I know each other like the back of our own hands. We know what we like. We know what we dislike. We know when we're in good moods and when we're in bad moods. So today, Darris joins me on today's show to discuss what is one move that we want to see happen and who was the unsung hero in 2024 for your Washington Nationals. So first and foremost, Darris, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming. You've been trying to get me to come on the Locked On program for quite some time. We finally were able to make it happen. So thanks for having me. I'm glad to be a part of Locked On.
Of course. And, this is one of, if not the best Nationals podcast out there, I will say. I don't know if you have any comments on that, but
I'm a regular listener.
Thank you.
I will say that it is amongst some of the best Nationals programming that there's available. Yes.
There we go. I appreciate that commentary from my guy. So, all right, Darris. The Nationals, we know they have a ton of areas to improve this season. You and I talk about this a lot. Like, we talk about it a lot as a show, off the air, on the air. The Nationals, this is an offseason where they need to go and make some moves. And there's a lot of different things out there. Like, I don't think the Nationals will go out there and sign both a starting pitcher and a first baseman or a third baseman or a left fielder. I don't see them making all these splash moves, but I do think that they have the ability to make one relatively big splash move. So I'm going to tee you up here, Darris. What is one move that you would like to see the Lerner family make this offseason?
Well, like you said, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say there's a lot of needs, but the needs that there are, they're glaring and they're major. And while I'm with you, I think, having faith in the Lerner family, spending a lot of money this offseason is probably a little too far reaching. I think Mike Rizzo is going to be able to convince them that now is the time to at least start dabbling. The pipe dream for everybody is to go get a starting pitcher, potentially go get a right fielder, and potentially get a first baseman and a DH, maybe a third baseman in case Brady House isn't ready anytime soon. That's what everybody's dream list is. I think if we just had to settle on one thing, I would want it to be a first baseman. I think first base is a spot where you can not only plug in a potential power hitter, which is what this lineup needs. This lineup is going to need some power that supports a guy like James Wood and potential young superstars that we have, such as CJ Abrams and the bunch. But I also think that first base is one of those positions where some of the guys that are available as free agents are going to provide some veteran leadership that the team needs. The team is young. We have a lot of these young rising stars that are coming from our minor league system and coming via trades that they're going to need a support system of veteran leadership. And I think first base, with the guys that are available at that position, I think that's the position where we can suffice that need.
Yeah, and there's like a couple different names out there because I've talked about this a lot. I believe I did a show on this last week where I want the Nationals to go out there and sign Pete Alonso, kind of similar to what they did in 2011 when they signed Jason Worth from one of your rivals, a team that has been beating up on you for the last few seasons with the Philadelphia Phillies. I think the Nationals, what would make sense for me today is going out there and getting Pete Alonso. We've seen what this guy has done throughout the postseason in his multiple stints here. This postseason, he was great. But people like to talk about this there. So they're like, well, look at his numbers. His numbers have gotten simultaneously worse year after year after year. And this season, in his contract year, it was probably his worst season to date. But still, Pete Alonso solves a huge need, in my opinion. He's got the power. He's got kind of the swagger and the leadership that you would like from a team leader, and also from one of your first basemen. Now, here's also the downside of signing a Pete Alonso. I think Pete Alonso defensively is a downgrade from Joey Gallo. I think it's a downgrade from Dominic Smith from what we saw last season. And the reason why I'm actually kind of concerned about that part of it is think back to 2023 with Dominic Smith. He was awful offensively, but defensively, he was like really good, gold glover caliber kind of guy. And you saw what that impact was on this Nationals pitching staff and as well as the defense. Like, you've got a young shortstop and you've got a young middle and infield tandem with Luis Garcia Jr. and CJ Abrams. So those guys are going to make mistakes. They are not particularly great fielders up the middle here already. Having Dominic Smith or a Joey Gallo there saved a lot of errors. And even then, the Nationals defensively, they were still one of the worst defensive teams this season. Joey Gallo missed a lot of the year. I don't think if Joey Gallo played 162, that would have helped them necessarily all too much, but you do see the value there. But overall, at the end of the day, Darris, I'm an offensive guy. I need to see some sort of power production from my first baseman. We have not seen that. We have not seen that probably since Ryan Zimmerman in 2019. And even then, like, he was good, but he was replaceable as well. He was solid defensively back there. So Zimmerman got the job done. But even then, probably going back to like Adam LaRoche was when the last time we had consistent production from a first baseman here in DC. And I think the time is now in order to make that happen. Because again, having that bat in the middle of your lineup, huge part of it, big defensive guy as well. I would like to see the Nationals go make that splash move. Now, again, Pete Alonso will be that step back defensively, but he'll be that step up offensively in an area that you need it so badly. Soon as going to hit 35 to 40 plus home runs every single year, no matter what. He will stay healthy. He'll be a team leader in the clubhouse. And again, it's going to be a little bit of a young guy saying here. He's got some aura. You kind of need some aura on this Nationals team. CJ Abrams was that for us in the first half. Second half, it went away, and we all know what happened there. But what would you think about the Nationals signing Pete Alonso, though, Darris? Like, do you think that is something that is feasible? And would you even want a Pete Alonso on this team?
I actually do like the idea of, one, stealing somebody from a division rival. It's something that we've dealt with over the years.
Yeah.
You may have heard of some examples of such, Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, whatnot. Yeah, Kyle Schwarber. I guess the list could go on. I could list off a bunch.
We could go
more.
a lot of guys.
Yeah. So I do like the idea of stealing from a division rival, because not only are you making your division rival weaker, but you are adding a very talented player, again, a big-time clubhouse leader. And like you said, it's a young person's term, but it's true. Pete Alonso does provide an aura that, not very many players on this team have. We have a lot of, while we do have a lot of young guys, and some of our guys do carry some kind of swagger to them, we also have a good chunk of those guys that are very quiet and kind of reserved, and they just bring their lunch pail and they go out there and they hit, which is fine. But I think a good mix to a potential, long-term developing championship team is having some players who can kind of be the forefront and be the face that's on, if you're on a national TV broadcast on Fox or ESPN, they're going to put Pete Alonso's face on that graphic that shows up on your TV, because he does kind of have that swagger, that leadership, that, again, aura to him that I think works. So yeah, I do like the idea of Pete Alonso. Like I said, it is a defensive downgrade from some of the first basemen that we've had in the last few years. But I think that should also be a signifier to the team and the coaching staff that, hey, the middle infield, you guys got to pick it up now. The first baseman can't always save your bacon. So it's got to be one of those things where you're now telling your two young guys that are in the middle infield and their backups, because they're likely to play as well, especially the way Davey runs rotations. I think this is the time where you tell those guys it's time to step up. Pete Alonso or whoever comes in at first base can't always be an all-world caliber defensive first baseman that's going to save your bacon every moment.
Yeah, and those are all great points because also there's another guy out there, Darris, Christian Walker, first baseman, Arizona Diamondbacks. He's a free agent. He's probably going to win a third Gold Glove this year.
That'd be an accomplishment to win a Cy Young
over at first base.
Wow.
I know, that'd be crazy. But I mean, he's someone who provides power, provides really good defense as well over at first base. But my thing with Christian Walker is that this guy's going to be 34 before opening day. Like, I'm not really in the business to get a long-term deal done with someone. I don't know what a deal would look like for Christian Walker, but in order to swipe him away from other contending teams who will want him, I would imagine that it's going to cost the Nationals. Like, you're going to have to pay a loser tax for him, and you're going to have to pay a loser tax for Pete Alonso, but I'd much rather pay that loser tax for someone who will be here a lot longer and who is still in the prime of his career, rather than going for a 34-year-old who you might have to overpay a little bit. I mean, he wasn't 100% healthy this past season, only played 130 games this year, but he's also someone who could be in the market for this Nationals team. What would you think about a Christian Walker signing?
So Christian Walker actually would be my answer to this question of what's one move that you want to see happen if we're talking the first base position. Well, I think you're right. Giving him, say, a 10-year deal is not feasible, considering his age, whereas that's something that's probably more likely with a guy like Pete Alonso. But what I think you are getting with Christian Walker is a little bit of a defensive upgrade over what Pete Alonso would bring to the table. Again, not as high of a defensive upside as a Joey Gallo or Dominic Smith, but then you're bringing that offensive upgrade. This is a guy that's hit 30 home runs a few times over the last couple of years. This is a guy who's been to the World Series within the last year. He just went to the World Series with the Diamondbacks against the Texas Rangers last year, and has a lot of good playoff experience because of that run. And I think that helps. I think that's some of the actual leadership and the, hey, get on my back. I've been here before. I know how to do this kind of attitude that I think he can bring. And I also think it's not a bad thing to have a first baseman who is a little bit older and on a little bit of a shorter deal, because you may potentially have some guys in the works that could come up, like a Yohandy Morales in a couple of years that could take over that first base slot and bring you, a potential long-term option at first base. So you're not necessarily with a Christian Walker on a shorter term deal. Let's just say, I don't know. Again, we don't know exactly what the market would be for him. Let's just take a guess that it's a 3-ish, 4-year deal where you overpay in terms of average annual value. That puts you in a spot where eventually maybe he's able to move to DH, and then you bring up a Yohandy Morales or let's just say your system develops someone else at the first base position that can come up later down the road and be that ultimate young defensive upgrade with high power upside. I think it's a good idea to have Christian Walker be that kind of placeholder, but also I guess it'd be more than a placeholder because of the offensive potential that he could bring in the middle of that lineup. So I really like the Christian Walker idea. I think it would ultimately be cheaper than Pete Alonso. It's not as long of a commitment, but it also helps you in the right now and over the next couple of years as this team continues to develop.
Those are all great points. And of course, Darris, you bring great points to the table. So that's why I had you on today's show. But now, Darris, we're going to talk about some of the 2024 Nats. They finished 71-91 this year for the second straight year. But I want to get into this. Who is your unsung hero of the 2024 Nationals? And we'll discuss that after we tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. And of course, I've told you guys all about FanDuel since day one. They are America's #1 sports book. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big win with our friends over at FanDuel. And you can just bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets today if you bet on any NFL action. And of course, this weekend, you've got the Commanders, of course, taking the field once again. But more importantly, NFL action is here. Maybe you think there is a Jaden Daniels anytime touchdown for this weekend, or maybe you think you're going to go with the Bears side. Caleb Williams, anytime touchdown. You can place those bets with our friends over at FanDuel. And when you do it, make sure to download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that is FanDuel.com. Again, go to FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook, and you will find your latest individual bets that you can place there with our friends at FanDuel. Again, just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And we are joined today by Darris Dameron, my co-producer over from Grant and Danny, the guy in charge, is what we'll say. But we are talking all things Nationals today. Of course, this is the Locked On Nationals podcast, so we won't get into any other shtick. Maybe we will later on, Darris, but we'll see. Who is your unsung hero, though, in 2024? I'll give you my answer, but I'm interested to see what you have to say about that.
So I think I have a couple, if that's okay. Am I allowed to do that?
You're allowed to do that.
So I want to say my first one is Mitchell Parker. I know he kind of tailed off towards the end of the season, but I think what Mitchell Parker did was he kind of stabilized what could have become a quickly disastrous situation with our starting rotation. You have to remember that early in the season, Josiah Gray went down after just 2 starts. And I believe it was Mitchell Parker that was the next man. That was the next man up. Also, you got to remember that Trevor Williams went down after 7-ish or so starts, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So with those 2 guys going down, that were major parts of the 5-man rotation, Mitchell Parker coming up and basically dazzling right away. You know, the guy made his first start out against one of his first starts out against the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's a tough task to ask. And he just kept pitching well pretty much all the way through the season. As he, again, as a rookie, he hit some lulls and hit some bumps in the road. But I think him stabilizing, being a part of stabilizing the rotation throughout the season, and at least showing you that there's potential that he could be a contributor as a left-hander, whether it's out of the bullpen at some point, whether it's a starter, whether it's a sixth man, whatever it is, Mitchell Parker can contribute in this organization. And if not, then he's at least a valuable potential trade target for some other teams that might be looking for a left-handed starter. So Mitchell Parker is one of them for me. My other one, I'll just be real quick on this one, is Derek Law. I think, again, when you talk about a stabilizing force, when you talk about a stabilizing guy in the bullpen, a bullpen that was early in the season outside of Kyle Finnegan and Hunter Harvey, the bullpen was kind of volatile. And then as the season went on, I would say Derek Law was a part of stabilizing that. Now his issue was, especially early in the season, was giving up inherited runners all the time, which was something that he didn't do in his previous year with his previous team. So that was kind of one of those weird baseball quirky things where it's like, oh, this guy was amazing at this thing last year, and then all of a sudden this year he's the worst, the worst in baseball.
Yeah,
that part wasn't ideal. But as the season went on, those numbers kind of evened out. He got better in that scenario, and then he became more reliable as somebody that was basically a rubber arm out of the bullpen, was eating innings whenever there was a short start by some of those young pitchers like a Mitchell Parker and a Mackenzie Gore, who often had short starts because he would go out there and walk the yard a few times through the first couple innings. So I think Derek Law was an unsung hero along with Mitchell Parker, a couple of pitchers for this Nationals staff.
Those are both really good answers, because like Mitchell Parker, like the thing is, we didn't have expectations for him this season. Like when Mitchell Parker got called up, like his debut at Dodger Stadium on Jackie Robinson Day, like we're all like, all right, this is going to be a you-know-what show. Like he's going up against this loaded Dodgers lineup, Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. Like the stars were aligning for Mitchell Parker to just get dunked on by that Dodgers lineup. And he came in, pitched really well. His second start, he strung together a ton of great starts And then all of a sudden you're like, well, this guy, you have to see this through throughout their 162 game season. So
I want to say the Astros was his next start.
Yeah,
Followed the
that's
Dodgers
right.
start, which is just unbelievable to go back to back against the Dodgers and Astros and not fall flat on your face.
I know.
That's extremely courageous for your first 2 career starts.
Yes, seriously. And so it's like, Mitchell Parker, like, I'm not as high on him as I was then. Like, I was thinking, like, oh my God, like Mitchell Parker is just like a diamond in the rough. Like, the Nationals have finally found their way with a left-handed pitcher who's just come out of nowhere, will be a mainstay in this rotation for hopefully years to come. But I think the pixie dust surrounding him kind of wore off a little bit as the season went on for me. I think he still could be a part of the rotation moving forward. I think he will be to start 2025, but I'm just not there with him anymore. But you mentioned Derek Law, though. I talked like it was kind of one of those things where you don't really talk about Derek Law too much. Like, no offense, the fans don't really want to hear about Derek Law too much. Then all of a sudden, you like check his numbers in like August, and you're like, this guy has really good numbers, actually. Like, he's getting the job done. And you said like the inherited runners thing, like that was a huge issue for him all season long, but still, at the end of the day, he was probably like a top 4 reliever for this Nationals team. It doesn't say too much. The Nationals bullpen wasn't all too great, but this guy was definitely like a contributor to this bullpen. And I said it a few weeks ago on the podcast, I'm talking about some of the free agent this team has, and he'd be one of the guys that I would easily bring back. And I would love to bring back, actually. Major league deal, give him a couple million. I mean, he'll be a steady arm in this rotation for hopefully the next year or two. Train him at the deadline maybe for a prospect. Who knows? Or he's just a part of you and making a postseason run. But I thought Derek Law was a really intriguing answer. I'm going to give you my answer, Darris, after this break. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. We are joined by Darris Dameron from the Grant and Danny Show. And Darris, he said his 2 unsung heroes of 2024, Mitchell Parker and Derek Law. Well, I'm going to go that same route. DJ Hers. That is my answer. I think DJ Hers, and I just did an episode on this actually a few days ago. I think DJ Hers has the second highest ceiling as far as national starting pitchers go today. I think DJ Hers is filthy, number one. And number two, like, I think that this guy legitimately could be a big part of the rotation moving forward. Like, this guy's got the stuff. He's got the nasty changeup. His fastball is pretty ridiculous in generating swings and misses this season. And I think DJ Hers is going to be one of those guys where going into 2025, he might be like your number 3 kind of guy. Jake Irvin is also in this conversation as well to be, behind Mackenzie Gore. And hopefully the Nationals do go and add a veteran ace kind of guy. I don't know who that could be at this point. Maybe you'll make a trade for someone. Maybe you sign someone. Who knows what the Nationals could do. We'll get into that a lot more this offseason. But DJ Hers was like that pleasant surprise for me, though, Darris. Like, when we called him up originally, it's like you look at his numbers, you're like, he's kind of getting rocked around in Rochester right now. Like, this doesn't really seem to be the right scenario to have this kid come up. He's getting hit around all the time down in Rochester. So, like, what gives? But then he came up, looked solid in his debut, nothing too special. I believe he went against the Mets. He got that home run against Pete Alonso. I do remember that now. And then after that, DJ Hers kind of he was a smooth sailor throughout that season. And on my opinion, in the second half of this year, he was your Nationals' best starting pitcher. So I think DJ Hers was that unsung hero for me. And I look forward to having a huge season from him come 2025.
Yeah, Hers definitely became one of those guys that it was fun to watch. Anytime that he pitched, you're having a blast watching him because you just don't know if the guy's going to come out there and strike out 14, which he did at one point this year.
He did
several times this year where he just came out there and he was just punching out the entire yard. He put up some unbelievable performances this year. He never really got a chance to be completely stretched out. I think if he went 7 innings, he may have only did it once. So a lot of times they kind of kept the reins on him, didn't really want him to go through the lineup any more than 3 times. for the most part. But man, what a huge surprise. You got to remember he came from the trade in which we sent Jamer Candelario to the Chicago Cubs last year at the trade deadline and got DJ Hers and Kevin Made in return. Kevin Made, who had a pretty decent minor league season for the most part. But Hers definitely was a huge surprise. I think, like you said, he definitely steps forward ahead of Mitchell Parker, who I think the organization probably had a little more faith and hope in Mitchell Parker. They have to be a little bit surprised by what they got from DJ Hers this year.
They have to be.
And like you said, some of the numbers coming into his first start from Rochester up into the major league, some of his numbers weren't that great, but we're lucky to be plugged in with our guy Grant Paulson from the Grand Danny Show, and he's very plugged in when it comes to minor league stuff. And he was one of those guys that told us, like, hey, this guy has some filthy stuff, and like, even though he gets hit sometimes, even though he walks the yard sometimes, the hitters have a hard time seeing him. His arm angle is very deceptive. That 93, 94 mile an hour fastball looks faster because of his arm angles that he throws from. It's very, very intriguing to have that kind of capability from the left side of the rubber, and I'm excited for what the future could be for DJ Hers. Absolutely.
Awesome. Darris, this is a lot of fun, man. This certainly will not be the last time we have you on Locked On Nationals. So I appreciate you joining us today.
I'm honored to be a part of one of the better Nationals podcasts that are out there.
Thank you. I will clip that and make sure to send that out because, that's what I'll do. How about that? All right, Darris. I appreciate you coming on today. And of course, you can catch Darris over on Twitter at @_game836. I'm Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11. He's Darris and I am Ryan. I will catch you guys on the flip side, and Darris will as well after today's show. Have a good one. Go Nats.